Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the Aerojet Area 49,000 Remedial Action Plan RAP public meeting. Today is June 28, 2023, 6 p.m. I am Tammy Pickens, the Public Participation Specialist for the Department of Toxic Substance Control. Next slide. By participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise. During the question and comment, we will focus on topics related to today's presentation. We will do our best to listen and address all comments and questions so that everyone can participate. Thank you for your patience and understanding. Next slide. Tonight's meeting is to provide information regarding Aerojet Area 49,000 project, receive comments on the Remedial Action Plan RAP, and answer questions. The presentation materials are available at www.envirostore.dtsc.ca.gov, Aerojet General Corporation Superfund site. This link will be provided in the chat. Media questions can be sent to Russ Edmondson at DTSC Office of Communication at russ.edmondson@dtsc.ca.gov. This information will also be provided in the chat. Next slide. Tonight's agenda includes open remarks, Tammy Pickens, Public Participation Specialist, an overview of the cleanup process by Jawan Payne, the Unit Chief, an overview of the Remedial Action Plan for Aerojet Area 49,000, Susan Scudder, Project Manager. We will then have questions and answers. I will facilitate an informal comment. Next slide. Department of Toxic Substance Control mission. DTSC's mission is to protect California's people, community, and environment from toxic substances to enhance economic vitality by restoring contaminated land and to compel manufacturers to make safer consumer products. Next slide. Jawan Ping will begin her presentation. Jawan.
Thank you, Tammy. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to walk you through DTSC's cleanup process to help you better understand what has been done, where we currently are, and what's coming up next for this project. DTSC starts our work once a site is discovered that has potential releases of contaminants. We then assess and identify the potential risks the site may pose and complete the community profile, public participation plan, and other important outreach documents as our early cleanup measures. After that, site investigation will take place. Based on the data collected, potential actions to clean up the site will be identified and discussed. Since Aerojet Area 49,000 is part of the Aerojet Superfund site, we have passed these early stages. The proposed remedial action that Susan will walk you through in a minute is a remedy component approved by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or US EPA, for this Superfund site. The remedy is required to mitigate indoor air vapor intrusion risks to protect building occupants and construction workers from exposure to elevated concentrations of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, in indoor air. Because the new owner of the property is implementing a Superfund remedy under DTSC oversight, they followed our process to present to the DTSC and the general public the type of indoor air mitigation system they're selecting, which is the focus of today's public meeting for the draft Remedial Action Plan, or RAP, which is where we are now in the cleanup process. You can provide your comments to us during today's public meeting or in writing before July 13th, 2023. DTSC will review and provide responses to your comments and incorporate your comments pertinent to the proposed remedy in the final RAP. After the RAP is finalized, the owner will receive an approval from DTSC to move forward with designing and later constructing the remedy under DTSC oversight. The remedy will require operation and maintenance, and DTSC will continue to be the oversight agency to ensure the remedy remains effective in protecting human health and the environment. Next slide, please. With that, I would like to introduce Susan Scudder, the DTSC project manager of the site. Susan will provide an overview of the remedial action plan for Aerojet Area 49,000.
Thank you, Joanne. My name is Susan Scudder. I'm an engineering geologist and a project manager in the Site Mitigation and Restoration Program at the DTSC. Next slide. Area 49,000, the site, is located at the southwest corner of Folsom Boulevard and Hazel Avenue in Rancho Cordova, California. It is part of the Perimeter Groundwater Operable Unit, PGOU or OU5, of the Aerojet Superfund site. Remedial actions for the PGOU were performed between 2016 and 2021. Following those actions, Area 49,000 was sold by Aerojet to North Point Development. North Point plans to develop the property with a set of warehouses. They were referring to their development as the Rancho Cordova Logistics Center. Next slide. Here's a map showing the site location at the northern edge of the Aerojet facility boundary, at the southwest corner of the intersection of Folsom Boulevard and Hazel Avenue, where Hazel Avenue turns into Nimbus Road. The Aerojet boundary is shown in blue. The property owned by North Point and being developed as the Rancho Cordova Logistics Center is shown in orange outline. And the gray portion within the orange outline is Area 49,000 of the Superfund site. The shaded light purple portion shown on these maps is called the carve-out lands, which are not part of the Aerojet Superfund site. Next slide. Site history and use. From the late 1800s to the early 1900s, there were historic gold dredging activities on this land and much of the rest of the Aerojet Superfund site. Starting in the 1950s, Aerojet began operating at Area 49,000. At the height of operations in the 1960s and 70s, there were as many as 28 separate buildings on the site. Activities performed included rocket motor parts manufacturing, non-destructive testing, cleaning and degreasing, bulk chemical storage, and other industrial machining. Chemical tanks and drums, sumps, fuel tanks, and wastewater drainage ditches were some of the historical features identified for the site. In the 1980s and 1990s, most of these operations shut down and most of the buildings were demolished. Currently, there is just one building remaining, called Building 49011, and it is planned for eventual demolition as part of the redevelopment. Next slide. This map shows historic features and source areas that were identified for the site during the remedial investigation phase for PGOU. It also shows the locations of several of the former Aerojet operations buildings at the site. Next slide. Regulatory history. As mentioned, Area 49,000 is part of the PGOU of the Aerojet Superfund site. The Aerojet site was added to the National Priorities List, or NPL, in 1983. US EPA is the lead agency on NPL sites, supported by DTSC and the Water Board. In 2009, the PGOU remedial investigation was completed. In 2011, US EPA issued Records of Decision, or RODs, for the PGOU. There are two RODs, an interim ROD for groundwater and a final ROD for soil. The interim ROD for groundwater includes active groundwater remediation in the PGOU, which is ongoing, and protection of human health and the environment through the implementation of land use covenants to restrict exposure to and use of contaminated groundwater. The final ROD for soil included performing soil vapor extraction, or SVE, for the central portion of Area 49,000, followed by land use restrictions if contamination remained in soil and soil vapor at unsafe levels once the SVE was completed. Next slide. The SVE system was designed to remove volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, from soil vapor in the vadose zone beneath the central portion of Area 49,000. It operated from January 2016 to December 2019 under agency oversight. According to the Remedial Action Completion Report prepared by Aerojet's consultant, Stantec, the SVE system reduced VOC concentrations in the influent by 96%, removed 499 pounds of VOCs, including over 320 pounds of trichloroethene, or TCE, and had reached asymptotic removal rates prior to being shut down. The agencies reviewed the Remedial Action Completion Report, and US EPA issued an approval letter for the SVE system, indicating the SVE remedy was complete, but that the rod soil remedy would not be complete until land use restrictions were recorded for the site. Next slide. 2 land use covenants, or LUCs, were recorded in December 2021 as required by the US EPA RODS. A groundwater-related LUC restricts groundwater access and use to prevent exposure to contaminated groundwater remaining underneath the site. A soil vapor LUC restricts the land use to commercial and industrial uses only and requires any new buildings built on the land to have appropriate vapor mitigation measures to prevent exposure of occupants to potential intrusion of VOC vapors. It also requires a DTSC approved soil management plan prior to soil disturbance activities. Next slide. Regulatory oversight. DTSC is now the lead agency for executing and implementing the LUC requirements. Since North Point purchased the land to build new buildings, DTSC is now working with North Point directly on determining the appropriate type of vapor mitigation measures for their planned buildings, as required by the Vapor Mitigation LUC. DTSC requires a remedial action plan in order to select the type of vapor mitigation remedy for buildings 1 and 2, which are the only buildings scheduled for development at this time. Future warehouses on Area 49,000 will require separate remedial action plans. Next slide. This figure shows the site plan for the Rancho Cordova Logistics Center. The 5 planned warehouses are shown as dashed purple outlines. The labels for buildings 1 and 2 are highlighted. There are also 4 stormwater detention basins shown in blue that are part of the redevelopment plans. Next slide. Contaminants of concern and exposure pathways. The contaminants of concern and exposure pathways for the site are as follows. VOCs and soil vapor beneath the site could accumulate under buildings and intrude into indoor air. For surface soil, the soil quality was tested and determined to be acceptable for commercial and/or industrial use. The LUC restricts land use to these types and requires a DTSC-approved soil management plan prior to any grading or soil disturbance. For groundwater, VOCs, perchlorate, and N-nitrosodium methylamine, or NDMA, are found in groundwater beneath the site. The depth to groundwater is approximately 40 to 50 feet. Exposure to groundwater is restricted by the existing groundwater LUC. The PGOU interim rod groundwater remediation is ongoing, and consistent with the groundwater LUC, the stormwater detention basins will be constructed with liners to prevent infiltration of water to the subsurface. Next slide. Purpose of this RAP. Vapor mitigation is required for any new buildings constructed on the site for human occupancy, per the existing LUC. DTSC requires a RAP to determine the specific vapor mitigation remedy. This RAP compares remedial alternatives for vapor mitigation for buildings 1 and 2, and presents the proposed alternative to meet the remedial action objectives for soil vapor, which include prevention of any exposure to contaminated vapors emanating from soil and groundwater, and consideration of the existing and reasonably foreseeable land use of the site. Next slide. Protection of human health. The site is currently fenced with signs along the perimeter. There is no public access. Soil moving and grading activities are being conducted according to a DTSC approved site management plan, with health and safety requirements for workers, dust monitoring, and dust suppression. If unexpected impacted soil is encountered during soil moving activities, contingency actions will be taken per the site management plan, including soil testing and proper disposal. Next slide. 3 remedial alternatives were evaluated in the RAP for vapor intrusion mitigation. The first alternative is no action, which is an alternative that is required by regulation to be evaluated for comparison purposes. This alternative is in violation of the existing soil vapor LUC and is not protective of human health and is not an acceptable alternative for the site. The second alternative is a passive vapor mitigation system with active contingency. The third alternative is a sub-slab depressurization system, or SSD. The remedial alternatives were evaluated against the 9 criteria specified in the National Contingency Plan, Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulations. Based on the evaluation criteria, the preferred alternative is Alternative 2, Passive Vapor Mitigation System, or VMS, with active contingency. Next slide. This passive vapor mitigation system would be incorporated into the construction of each building. This would consist of a vapor barrier membrane underneath each building slab, horizontal piping below the slab connected to risers that extend to the building roof, and wind-assisted turbines on the top of each riser at the roof that would induce a vacuum on the piping network. Next slide. The network of piping and risers continuously collects VOC vapors that may accumulate under the building's slab and vents vapors to the roof. The venting system is considered passive as it functions continuously based on the differences in temperature and pressure beneath the building slab and at the building roof. This passive system also includes inlet vents that allow fresh air from the exterior of the building at ground surface to be pulled into the gravel area beneath the building slab. Next slide. Based on soil vapor VOC concentrations, passive VMS is expected to be more than sufficient to prevent exposure to contaminated vapors in indoor air. However, if VOC concentrations in indoor air samples during passive VMS operation are elevated above DTSC-approved threshold values due to vapor intrusion, the system will be converted to active. This will be done by installing power-assisted electrical blowers on each of the vent risers at the roof to induce higher vacuum and air exchange rate. Indoor air will then be resampled with the active VMS operating in order to verify indoor air concentrations are below the DTSC approved threshold values. Next slide. Ongoing protection of human health. Once the VMS is in place and the building constructed, there will be testing of the indoor air to confirm it is clean prior to allowing building occupancy. Ongoing operation and maintenance, or O&M, of the VMS in accordance with DTSC approved VMS plans and O&M agreement. And ongoing monitoring of indoor air and soil vapor for as long as the soil vapor concentrations at the site are above levels safe for protection of human health. All monitoring and O&M will be overseen and reviewed for approval by DTSC. Monitoring results will be compared to DTSC approved criteria consistent with the toxicity criteria rule, Title 22 of the California Code of Regulations. Next slide. Here's the tentative project timeline. On July 13th, 2023, the public comment period for the draft RAP will end. From July to August 2023, DTSC will respond to comments received on the draft RAP and work with North Point to revise the RAP if needed based on those comments. In August 2023, the RAP should be finalized, and a public notice will be issued for the final RAP. In late 2023, the remedial design plan will be finalized and the buildings constructed with the VMS. Following construction, there will be post-construction completion reports submitted to DTSC for review. Pre-occupancy indoor air monitoring will be conducted and the results reviewed for approval by DTSC prior to allowing the buildings to be occupied. Moving forward, there will be indoor air and soil vapor sampling, quarterly for 1 year, semi-annually for years 2 and 3, and annually thereafter. DTSC will also review annual LUC inspection reports to verify there are no activities being conducted inconsistent with the LUCs. And we will also have 5-year review reports on the site to ensure the continued protectiveness of the remedy. Next slide. I will now pass the presentation back to Tammy Pickens for the questions and comments period. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We are now at the Q&A portion of this presentation. This slide provides an overview of the 3 ways you can ask a question or make a comment. Zoom audio, use the raise hand feature, and you will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn. Phone audio, press star 9 to join the phone queue. The facilitator will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Press star 6 to unmute your line. Text only, use the Q&A feature to have your questions read. Since we don't have any questions or comments on the presentation, we will take a 5-minute break, and when we return, we will begin the formal comment process. Next slide. Welcome back. Next slide. We are now at the comment portion of this presentation. This is the portion where we will take your comments without responding. You will receive a written response in a document called a response to comment. This slide will provide an overview of the 3 ways that you can make comments. Zoom audio, use the raise hand feature, and you will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn. Phone audio, press star 9 to join the phone queue. I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Press star 6 to unmute your line. Text only, use the Q&A feature to have your questions read by myself. Formal comments will be answered in a response to comment letter accompanying the wrap approval. Jawan Ping is now our hearing officer. Jawan?
Thank you, Tammy.
Don't have any questions or any hand raised. Jawan, you may close the meeting when you are ready.
Thank you, Tammy. The meeting now is closed.
Next slide. The public comment period began June 8th, 2023 to July 13th, 2023. Please send written comments to Susan Scudder, Project Manager at DTSC 880 Cal Center Drive, Sacramento, California 95826, susan.scudder@dtsc.ca.gov. You can also use our EnviroStore link at www.envirostore.dtsc.ca.gov. This information will be provided in the chat. You can look under the Aerojet General Corporation Superfund site. Next slide. I want to thank everyone for attending. On behalf of DTSC, thank you for joining us. This meeting has concluded. Thank you.